I'm actually doing something today. I'm changing my squash garden up completely. Currently, I've had it in this box. And this box was originally built for a potato box, not squash. And if you know anything about squash, they don't grow in the ground, they grow up, and they take a lot of space. One of the things I'm doing is I've thinned it out. I've taken out half the plants. I'm gonna leave 3 in here for now to see how that goes. If not, I'll thin it out again. But what I'm building, instead of vertical trellises, which are perfectly fine, you can literally just put a post in the ground, tie your squash to it, and they grow straight up. It is an amazing way to grow squash. But I want to try something that's going to make harvesting even better. What I'm essentially going to do is I'm going to create a 45-degree angle. It increases the square footage what they have, but the squash will actually just hang down under the leaves from the paneling. You can just go through, snip, and you're good. It increases airflow, reduces the risk of mold and everything else that comes with, squash, that powdery mildew buildup that they normally get. And it helps with fruiting. It also helps with increasing the amount of fruit that you get, because they're essentially at an angle. You get more square footage than you would in a box or even just in the ground. So come with me, I'll show you how I do this. So one of the things I did is I went through and thinned out my squash. I realized I had too many squash for this size of a box. This is a 4 foot long by 2.5 foot by 2 foot deep. And that's only about 20 cubic feet. I had 6 plants in here, which was severely stunting their growth. So I pulled a few of these out, and then I already started getting more baby squash growing. I do have some mold. This is also the reason why I'm doing this method. I've seen this a couple times, very rarely, because most people have them grow up a pole, which is fine. But I wanted to make harvesting much easier. So what I'm doing is I'm doing a 45-degree angle, and it will sit like this, and I'll show you. So what you're gonna do, or what I did, is I cut these at 40, these beams right here, I cut these at 45 inches, and these were the leftovers. These were 8-foot sticks, I believe, 2 inch by 2 inch from Home Depot. These are just leftovers. I didn't even measure those. So what you're gonna do is once you get these zipped in, which I gotta finish zipping that in, you're gonna raise this up, find your 45-degree angle. It helps if you have an angle finder, but find your 45-degree angles and zip those in. And then you're going to run paneling across from one side to the other. Cattle panel works better, but I have this thick gauge welded wire that's actually hard to bend. It's actually pretty difficult, so this should work well. And then that's where we're going to go. So what you're going to do is once you get these zipped in, which I got to finish zipping that in, you're going to raise this up, find your 45-degree angle. It helps if you have an angle finder, but find your 45-degree angles and zip those in. And then you're going to run paneling across from one side to the other. Cattle panel works better, but I have this thick gauge welded wire that's actually hard to bend. It's actually pretty difficult, so this should work well. And then that's where we're going to go. So this is why it's important to have you a speed square or some kind of angle finder. So I threw it up here and I went and checked, and I'm about 5 degrees off. I'm sitting at, I went a little too high. The thing about going too high is you actually start reducing the amount of square feet outward. And so I want this to come out. Essentially, the leaves are going to act kind of like a solar panel. They're going to absorb all the energy from the sun. If I have them too vertical, they'll actually start shading each other a little too much. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop this until I get that perfect 45-degree angle. All right, and this is essentially what the structure is going to look like. You're going to have what I'd call a half teepee. You got your vertical section and you got your angle. That's going to make your 45-degree angle there. And then you're going to take welding wire. Paneling is better, but I don't have any of that. And it's 37 minutes to the nearest place that has it. So I'm gonna use what I got. I'm gonna clip this off, and you're gonna just run this down the beam on both sides. And if need be, I will run a middle support, which I may have to. One of the things you have to make sure when you do this is you bring all your squash to the front. So all your squash plants will need to be gently to the front right here, and you can hang it here. They are flexible, just be gently, because the main stem, not the stalk, but the main stem is hollow and kind of brittle, so be careful. Once you have all those set forward, you can measure out your piece and get that cut out. All right, I got my section measured out. One of the things I like to use on these are a pair of lineman pliers. These things are great. I bought these 8 years ago and they still work great, but let's get this done. Throw that off to the side somewhere. We'll clean it up later. That's a future Jesse problem, not a right now Jesse problem. So I got it kind of just sitting up there right now. I've bent the edges where I cut around it to hold it in place. You have two options here. You can just use some tack nails, bend them over, which are easier, or if you want to do it the right way, you get some of those U-staples they use for paneling. I'm not doing that. That stuff sucks. So I'm gonna do some pin nails and just bend it over. So here you are. These are what I'm talking about. You can get these shorter, but we bought these when we did our animal closure panels. These work great. They got these barbs on them. It makes it really hard for it to ever come out again. But it's also really hard to hammer it into something, especially something that moves. If you're going to use these, I recommend putting this all together first and then assembling it on there, because you're gonna need a workbench. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a bunch of these tiny nails right here, tap them in and bend them over. Stuff around like tomatoes. Now kids, don't put random metal bits in your mouth, especially if you don't know what's on them. That tasted like WD-40. I am very well lubricated on the inside. But we got one side down, nice and sturdy. You want to, and I'm gonna go back and do that bottom piece right there. You wanna make sure you do at least every other one, but you have to do the top and the bottom. Otherwise it will start to flop around and it won't support very well. It won't keep tension. Now to move my other tomato plant. Make sure when you do this, you hammer in all the ends that are sticking out. You don't want your beautiful wife to come out here and get sliced open or harvest some squash. So a little preventative maintenance there. I think I will have to do a support beam here, which may have to wait, but essentially, if you have cattle panel, you would be done, because that's all this is right here. And this is plenty sturdy. Like, the wind's not gonna blow over, the plants aren't gonna get too heavy. This is just a little flimsy, which I could leave it as long as we don't let them grow too big, and that would be sturdy enough. But you know, I want to do a good job, so I'll add some extra pieces here later. And essentially that's it, guys. What you do is you'll take your squash, and you have to train them. They won't do it by themselves. Cucumbers and melons might do it a little easier, but you'll take your squash and you'll start to work them in to this up there. If you take some binding string or something like that, some cotton wrap or twine, gardener's twine, you could do this a lot easier. But this allows your flowers to get full sun. That also means more pollinators, more sunlight through the leaves, and all your fruit will hang down back here, and you just come in and collect it. Pretty cool setup that I saw. And I can't remember who I saw it from. It was just somebody, I was scrolling real quick and I seen it, but it was a lady gardening, and I had to try it. And I think this is gonna be an amazing setup. So, hope y'all like it. Have a good one.